وشاعت وباعت وبايعت وتابعت على قاتل وطعن على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر الحق مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم فز أنت أولا ظالم باللعن مني وثابت أولا، ثم لعن الثاني والثالثة والرابعة. اللهم لعن يزيد الخامسة، ولعن وعبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجان وعمر بن سعد والشمر وعلى أبي سفيان وعلى زياد وعلى مروان إلى يوم القيامة. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين لك على مسابهم. الحمد لله على عزيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود، وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا مهاجكم دون الحسين عليه السلام. وصل يا ربي على محمد وآل الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Well, my account got deleted, bro.
Why did it get deleted?
I don't know. Log into the game, right?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري أنه قال فاطمة الزهراء عليه السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله قال سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت خال لي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال السلام عليك يا فاطمة، فقلت عليك السلام، قال إني أجيب في بدني ضعفا، فقلت له أعيذك بالله يا أبتا من الضعف، فقال يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فأتيني به، فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فأتيته به، وسرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلعلع كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله، وما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أفضل. وقال السلام عليك يا أمه، فقلت عليك السلام يا قرة عيني والثامرة فؤادي، فقال يا أمه إني الشم الذي رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت البساط، فأقبلت السنة والبساط، فقال السلام عليك يا جدة يا رسول الله، أتعلمني أن أدخل معك تحت البساط؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب هذه، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت البساط، فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل. فقال السلام عليك يا أمه، فقلت وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثامرة فؤادي. فقال لي يا أمه إني أشم التي رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت البساط، فدعا حسين نحو البساط. فقال السلام عليك يا جدة، السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت البساط؟ قال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شاهد أمتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت البساط، فأقبل إلى ذلك الأب الحسن بن أبي طالب، فقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله، فقلت عليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. قال يا فاطمة إني أشم منك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أمير رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم ها هو مع ولديك تحت البساط. فأقبل علي نحو البساط وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت البساط؟ قال له عليك السلام يا أخي ويا وسيلي وخليفتي وصاحب اللواء، هل أذنت لك؟ فدخل علي تحت البساط ثم أتيت نحو البساط فقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت البساط؟ قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بنتي، هل أذنت لك؟ فدخلت تحت البساط فلما اجتمعوا جميعا تحت البساط وقال أبي رسول الله بثبات البساط رفع بيدها اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل البيت وخاصة محمد لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم، أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن صالحهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم، إنهم مني وأنا منهم، أنا منهم، واجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد
قال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سبحان سماواته إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مبنية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مديرة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبتي هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت البساط. فقال النبي جبرائيل يا ربي ومن تحت البساط؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل البيت النبوة ومعدن أنصارهم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل يا ربي أتأذن لي أن أحدث إلى الأرض ليكون معكم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمير جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، على وعلى يقولك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك عزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت السماء مبنية ولا أرضا مبنية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحر يجري ولا فلك يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم، وقد أذنني أن أدخل معكم فهل تعلمون يا رسول الله؟ قال رسول الله عليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت البساط فقال لي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى
قال النبي يا رسول الله أخبرني ما الجلوس هذا تحت الكساء من الفرد عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق الذي وصفني برسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع بمشيئتنا ومحبنا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة والحفظ بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي إن الله فزنا وفاز الشركنا وربنا. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وعلي على علي والذي بعثني بالحق الذي واصطفاني برسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض فيه جمع شيخنا ومحبنا فيه محموم إلا وفرج الله همه ولا مظلوم إلا وكشف الله ذمه ولا طالب حاجات إلا قضى الله حاجته. فقال علي والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل شوف
محمد وعلى محمد صلوات. الفاتحة. محمد وعلى محمد صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. قول شہ کربلا کو زندگی کا بھروسہ نہیں، جو بھی گرتا ہے اس غم آنسو، کوئی بیکار جاتا نہیں ہے۔ اور شہ کربلا کو زندگی کا بھروسہ نہیں ہے۔ جب چلے ہوں گے خیمے حرم کے، جب چنی ہوگی سر سے ردائے، جب جلے ہوں گے خیمے حرم کے، جب چنی ہوگی سر سے ردائے، کیا بنی ہوگی سیدانیوں پر، کیا بنی ہوگی سیدانیوں پر، وہ سما دل سے جاتا نہیں۔ شہ کربلا کو زندگی کا بھروسہ نہیں، بہر تعظیم اٹھو اے اکبر، پردہ داری کرو میرے دل پر، بہر تعظیم اٹھو اے اکبر، پردہ داری کرو میرے دل پر، آ رہی ہے سواری کبھی کی، آ رہی ہے سواری کبھی کی، جس کا کوئی سہارا نہیں، رولے شہ کربلا کو زندگی کا بھروسہ نہیں، کر کربلا میں جو جائے گی زینب کیا بتائے گی بھائی کو زینب کربلا میں جو جائے گی زینب کیا بتائے گی بھائی کو زینب چھٹ کے زندان سے آ رہا ہے چھٹ کے زندان سے آ رہا ہے ان میں پیاری سکینہ نہیں ہے رولے شہ کربلا کو زندگی کا بھروسہ نہیں جب مدینے میں جائے گی زینب کیا بتائے گی سغیرہ کو زینب جب مدینے میں جائے گی زینب کیا بتائے گی سغیرہ کو زینب وہ نشان رسن بازو پر وہ نشان رسن بازو پر میرے اب تک بھی چھٹتا نہیں رولے شہ کربلا کو زندگی کا ہے زندگی کا بھروسہ نہیں بر محمد وعلی محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد.
With the loud salawat, please help me to the Mulana to the number. But Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. والحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين بالقاسم المصطفى محمد. ثم الصلاة والسلام التحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على
مؤمنين مؤمنات, brothers and sisters in Islam and MASOM, So, in order to try to begin to increase and strengthen our iman, we realize that we have to develop a sense of yaqeen and certainty in every part of our faith and our deen. And we decided that based on a very logical way of approaching it, based on how the Quran addresses iman, the most important thing to start off with is obviously tawheed. Right? If we can increase our yaqeen in tawheed, then inshallah we increase our iman in tawheed. If we can increase our iman in tawheed, then that should start to extend out into all the other parts of our faith as well. So that's hopefully the goal. We started first last night by reorienting ourselves on what tawheed actually means. We tried to show that tawheed is not simply that God is one instead of zero or more than one, but the word tawheed itself is an action. So tawheed is not monotheism. It's not just believing that Allah is one. Tawheed is actually unifying all of reality and seeing it everything as an extension and a manifestation and a reflection of Allah and His names. That's real tawheed. So tawheed is in action, it's in practice, it's in performance. We have to do that in every moment of our lives. Whenever we look out at the world, whenever we face something, whether it's good or we think it's bad for us, our thoughts, our words, our actions have to be shifted to that sort of tawheedi lens. How does Allah want me to think about this? How does He want me to speak about this? How does He want me to react to an action like this? So that naturally should start making me toss aside my own opinions, my ego, my nafs. That's hopefully the goal of a proper person who's grounded in tawheed, or somebody we call a muwahhid, right? Who's going and unifying everything under this tawheedi lens. So we'll continue our discussion for tonight on tawheed. There's a few other points that I want to get across before we go into some of the other points of the usul al-din. We obviously, I'm sure we all believe that Islam, there's many other religions in the world, but clearly Islam has superiority over all other faiths. Sometimes we forget that Islam, we focus maybe on superiority in terms of our stance on social justice. Sometimes we think about it in terms of our the rights that are afforded to both men and women. Sometimes we talk about our system of tarbiyah. Sometimes it's our connection to Allah through prayer. We try to build the superiority in different ways. But one of the most superior things that we have is our understanding of tawheed, understanding of God. Even if we think about the name itself, right? Islam means what? Submission, right? To surrender, to submit. I know sometimes people mix up some of these concepts that, salam and Islam, say everything kind of is peaceful. No, not exactly. Salam, sure, you can translate as peace, but Islam is the state actively surrendering, giving oneself over to some entity, in this sense being Allah, right? Giving oneself up to Tawheed. And the result of that is somebody finds himself in a state of salama and peace. That's what should happen. If somebody gives themselves up to the proper authority, quote unquote, or hierarchy, then they should be in a state of peace. That's the idea. It's because you're unburdening yourself. I don't want to have to deal with all this stuff in my life. I'm letting Allah take the controls and the reins, let Him take the steering wheel. I should feel at peace because I don't have anything to worry about. That's what we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to get to. This is the only religion that the main focus is Allah, is God. Again, right there in the name, Islam. Other religions, even in their name, they're either focused on people or they're focused on maybe some like geographical location. Right? So an example is what? Judaism. I mean, there's different reasons for why Judaism is named that. Sometimes it's because it's the tribe of Judah, meaning it's people, or it's the area of Judea. So either based on people or tribe, or it's based on geographical location. Hinduism, right? Based on what? Hindustan. It's a region, it's a location. Christianity is based on Christ. Sure, they believe him to be the Son of God, sure. Not every branch, but the vast majority. But even there, that's still a human, they still believe him to be flesh and blood. So, okay, fine. You're naming your religion after a person. God, meaning the Father, is still not involved in this, right, naming of your religion. Buddhism, same thing. It's a Buddha, which is an individual, it's a person. So you can go off of all these other religions. We are the only one that, in the name itself, and the way that we are named too, we are named as Muslims, meaning somebody who submits. I am actively trying to give up my own ego and my nafs and surrender that over to Allah, to surrender that to God. That's how we're defined. And it's interesting because, I don't know how many of you know your history, the way that non-Muslims try to discuss and talk about us. In some books, if you look at like the way that people like Thomas Jefferson and some other Europeans, the way that they would try to talk about Muslims is they wouldn't refer to us as Muslims. You know what they would call us? They say Muhammadans. That's how they would try to refer to us. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Even in their mindset, they didn't want to refer to us how we refer to ourselves. Right? What's the common way that you kids use nowadays? It's a dead name, right? That's what I used to call it. Somebody has a preferred way of being addressed and you're not using that. Well, that's what they would do to us. Because they thought that, no, all religions boil down to a person, an individual. Like, well, that's not how it is for us. We have, sure, prophets, sure, we have imams, we have ulama, but they are not the definition of the religion. The definition of everything, all this stems back to Allah. It's Tawheed which begins everything else. And as we discussed 2 nights ago as well too, even the concept of wilayah, that wilayah, al-wali starts with Allah and then it gets transferred or delegated out to individuals that Allah decides. Right? So we're not people-centric in that sense, which is a good thing because people will pass away, they will die, they will move on, things can change. But that constant that remains in our deen is Allah, the most absolute, infinite, and perfect thing. So that's one thing that we have to keep in mind. Salawat ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. There's still probably parts of us, if you're like me when I was younger, that Tawheed is still almost like a foreign concept in our mind. And I don't just mean like these deeper understandings of like we talked about last night or deep understandings of Asma and Husna. No, nothing like that. I'm just saying the idea of God existing, right? Just like that. Sure, many of us have probably been raised with an understanding of God, so we believe it. Or maybe we've heard a few kind of arguments when we went to whatever, Sunday school, Saturday school, whatever, and maybe that convinced us that, okay, so now that's it, we believe in God based on that. But maybe, for various reasons, based on different circumstances, there's something, I don't know, maybe doubtful or broken or deficient, or that little gap or hole that might exist within our soul or our heart that is like, all right, is there really a God or not? That gap or that hole can be torn, that fabric can be torn in different ways. Sometimes it's just naturally, it comes to us where we have a doubt, right? Like, okay, like I had this when I was a kid, where, okay, I got the idea, I'm like, okay, God is there, I get it. But, and I would ask, like different ulama that would come in our community, I said, okay, well, where did God come from? How was he born? How was he created? Like, you're saying he's always there, I don't understand that concept. And the ulama, God bless them, they tried their best to answer it, but they couldn't really do it. Because, especially most of them were immigrants, language barrier, cultural barrier, whatever. So they just could not explain this stuff properly, so I just kind of gave up. Kind of sat in my mind. Sometimes we have those same types of questions as well too. We're, nothing created God, like God made himself. Like, how does this actually work? Even my own daughter asked me, like, who made God? Where did he come from? What do you mean he's always there? It's confusing, right? For youth and adults, it can be confusing to anybody because we don't have anything in reality that we can view, that we have experience with, that always is. So well, obviously, God is a unique concept, so it's tough to wrap our hands around that. So sometimes it's within ourselves, we have these doubts, and then we don't get the answers. That happens. Sometimes the doubts come from, maybe not within ourselves, but they come from outside. Sometimes it's our own family members. We see their weakness in Iman, their faith, they have doubts. Sometimes they kind of joke, half joke about it, or within every joke there's some level of truth. There's somebody just making random jokes about Islam or the Quran, things that they shouldn't be doing, but they do. Sometimes they make these jokes around kids, like an adult will make a joke like that around a child. They don't notice, but it's affecting the psyche of that child too, right? That, oh, it's okay to make jokes about this stuff. Sometimes they come from the outside, meaning all the way outside of our communities, where you have a classmate, maybe you have a teacher or professor or a colleague that just asks simple questions. Maybe they're not really trying to be antagonistic or hateful. They're just like, why do you believe that there's some, invisible God that does everything and watches all this? Like, why do you believe in that? And sometimes because we're called out like that, even if they have good intentions, they're trying to learn, we don't have a good answer for them. We might just say, oh, well, that's how I was raised, or that's what my parents told me, or that's just kind of how I feel it's correct. I can't tell you. Or we maybe try to give them some semblance of an argument that maybe we learned and it just doesn't come out right. And then they're like, oh, that's why you believe in it? And then because it doesn't convince them, then that ruins our iman too. So all of these things, wherever they come from, ourself, family, community, outsiders, these things little by little start to mess with our iman. And then that tawheed that might have been strong at one point now becomes weaker and weaker and weaker. And at some point, like we talked about in the first few nights, that identity that I thought I had before, now I'm just forgetting about God little by little. So that the next time where I'm told, hey, it's salah time, it's namaz time, in the back of my mind, that doubt is creeping in again. Is it really God or not? Do I really have to do this? So that doubt is eating away at me and preventing me from acting. As the ayah said, right? Forget about Allah, then you start to forget about yourself. That's the natural consequence of that. So what we want to try to do is to see, I don't know how many nights we'll spend on this, maybe we'll try to finish it by tonight, is do these atheists and agnostics, do these people, do they have a point? Like, are we just kind of grasping at straws here? Are we just people of blind faith, like Christians or Jews or anybody else? Like, we just believe in this invisible God, whatever, and there's no proof for it? Can't offer them anything scientific or anything logical. You just got to take it on faith. You have to feel it. If you can't, then whatever, too bad. Is that all we have, or is there something more? Right, so what we'll try to offer is some of the pieces of evidence that have been offered for a long time, but very simplified, watered-down versions of it that hopefully will be easily understandable to all of us. Salawat ala Muhammad. This idea of atheism or agnosticism or not believing in God, it's not something new. This has existed for a long time. Some people think that, oh, atheist, it's a new trend, right? It's happening now. It's a Western thing. Well, not exactly. Yeah, maybe it's getting stronger now because you have what we call, let's say, armchair atheists. People who just watch like one or two YouTube videos, or they see these famous influencers or so-called YouTube philosophers challenging our belief systems, or maybe they hear this one quote from, let's say, Richard Dawkins or Sam Harris or these famous atheists out there, and at one point, because we don't hear our own ulama or speakers responding to it, we're like, oh, there's no response, no, we're kind of left alone. So sometimes we're like, it's a problem that's only in the West. Or some people think that doesn't exist in the East. Well, no, unfortunately, atheism and all these things have been going in the East as well, too. There have been a lot of people that whatever they're Christian, Jewish, Muslim, or whatever faith that they have, little by little, because their issues are not getting answered, atheism is growing over there too. Even in the West right now, atheism was never a standard. I haven't looked at the research lately, but years ago, there was maybe only 6 to 8% of the U.S. that were actually atheistic, right? Self-professed atheists. Now, again, this was years ago when I checked the statistics or the polls that were there. That number now is almost 20, 30%. It's rising a lot. in societies, even in the old European societies, Western societies, there was whole groups that the average person said, we don't trust certain groups. Right? And one of those groups that they said that they don't trust are atheists. They said, why? Because they don't have any objective values. They're not accountable to anything. They only live here, they only believe they live here, so why would I take them at their word? Because they could lie and they don't care. They can't believe that lying is wrong. So I can't trust somebody like that. But nowadays, a lot of that stuff is flipped. They say, look, I can't trust a religious person because they believe in, but not like fairy tales. So I'd rather trust an atheist who uses their brain, their logic, their reasoning, they follow science. I'm going to trust them over anybody else. Don't bring your religion into the public sphere, the secular world, right? That's how they try to argue. But these same conversations, these debates, these doubts, they existed throughout history. Even at the time of the Ahlul Bayt, there were atheists that they had to deal with as well. So I want to share just one story for tonight. There was a famous companion that existed during the time of our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. His name was Muhammad ibn Umar. So, very famous companion. This story that I'm sharing just a part of it, not the whole story. This story has also been translated, the hadith rather, has been translated in English. I think the book is called Tawheed al-Mufaddal. I think that's the name of the translation in the original word too. So basically it's a long hadith that goes to this story and some more, but I'm just going to give you the first one. So this companion, Muhammad ibn Umar, was at Masjid al-Nabi once, sitting there doing his ibadah, whatever he was doing. While he was sitting there, kind of minding his own business, doing his ibadah, ziyarah, salah, Quran, whatever he was doing, two individuals now walk into Masjid al-Nabi. And these two individuals, one of them was the sort of head of the atheists at that time. His name was Ibn Ali Awja, that was his name. So it was him and one of his followers. So they come, and what they're doing in Masjid al-Nabi, that's a different conversation. But they're there, they sit down, and now they start having a conversation amongst themselves. So Ibn Ali Awja starts to have, kind of just speak from his heart about the situation and what's going on. And Mufaddal is sitting within earshot of them. So he's hearing all their conversation. He's trying to focus on his ibadah, but he's like a nosy uncle. He's listening to everything that's going on, right? So he hears this atheist say, man, isn't this amazing? That this guy, Muhammad, he came, he fooled everybody, he gave them this nonsense, these beliefs about God and him. He made himself the leader of all these things, and now his name is being recited constantly throughout, right? The Arabian Peninsula. He's kind of making a joke of everything. And he just kept going on and on and on. And Muhammad is sitting there, trying to focus on his ibadah, right? Like whatever, doing stuff, who knows what he's doing. And he's trying to, we've been in this situation, I'm sure, right? Where you're trying not to listen to somebody, but you are kind of listening to them, and you're like saying your thing, but half paying attention, but he's listening to them. And then at some point, when he's listening to this, he just can't take it anymore. Right? He just gets frustrated, he gets enraged, he gets up, he goes to this atheist, and just starts like screaming at him. He's like, how can you say this? How dare you say something like this? The most obvious thing in the world is God's existence, and the best of the creations is Rasulullah, and it goes on and on and on and on. This atheist is just kind of sitting there very calmly. Like, who are you? He's like, hold on. Where did all this stuff come from? Why are you screaming at me like this? And he's like, hold on. Are you one of these individuals who claims to be the student of Ja'far ibn Muhammad? Is that who you are? And Muhammad was like, yeah. He's like, okay. He's like, I've sat with your teacher before. He's never talked to me like this. He's like, when I go to your teacher, I sit with him. He greets me with like love and kindness. He accepts me. He listens to all of my arguments fully without interrupting, without ever getting enraged. And once I have fully explained myself, after he understands me, then he offers me something. He teaches me something in response to it. And then it gives me something to think about. He's like, if really that's your teacher, guarantee you haven't learned anything from him. So why don't you go back to your teacher and learn something? And now Mufaddal's like, oh man, this guy's like destroyed me. So now Mufaddal's upset. He just got ruined. And he goes to the sixth Imam and tells him what happened. He's like, this is what happened. I yelled at him. I did all this. But he gave me all these arguments, and I couldn't respond to anything. It's like, how can I establish Tawheed? How do I prove Allah to somebody like him? And the sixth Imam said, sit down, and then I'll start to give you some ideas, things that you won't ever forget. And the narration reports, Imam Sadiq puts his hand on Muhammad's heart. He says, I'm going to recite all these things to you, and I'll put it in your soul, in your qalb, so that you'll never forget. So the rest of the narration goes with all these various types of proofs that the Imam offers. I don't want to continue with those proofs. I'm going to go on a different, different sort of train of thought. I'm just showing you that a few different points. One, atheism existed back then too. The Ahlul Bayt dealt with it. They didn't call these guys out like they're kafirs, they're fools, they don't know what they're doing. No, they sat with them, they engaged with them, they had proper, I don't even want to say a debate, a discussion or a dialogue. And that's the way we should be going about it. But the other part of the story, before we go to our main proofs, that I think is important for all of us to know, for all of us who think that we're ambassadors of Islam and that we're scholars in training or whatever we think we are, that the minute we hear somebody say something that we don't agree with, that we don't like, that sounds blasphemous or whatever, we just start wanting to get into an argument and debate with anybody. Sometimes it's an atheist or an agnostic or maybe it's a Sunni, Christian, Jew, maybe it's our own people, maybe it's your own family that you want to start arguing with. Sometimes we argue with our kids, we argue with our parents, our siblings about what they believe. We're always kind of looking for a fight. Now there's a whole bunch of riwayat which tell us that arguments we're not recommended to argue with anything. It's bad for our heart. But there's two other principles that I think are important for us to know for if we do want to get involved in discussions and debates. After salawat ala Muhammad wa Now they might seem obvious after I say them, but it's something that is obvious, but a lot of us maybe we don't practice it. So the first is, look, if I want to engage in a discussion or a debate or an argument, whatever, with somebody, I need to make sure I actually have some ilm and knowledge about what I'm about to say. That doesn't mean that, I listened to a lecture and now I feel like I'm qualified to go and say everything that I just heard in that lecture. Being a recipient of knowledge is different than being a student of knowledge or being a scholar of knowledge. These are completely different categories. There are some of us that, I've been, a person of the minbar, I've been listening to lectures and majalis for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, so that qualifies me now to go and debate everybody. Look, most of us probably know, especially given our cultural background, the minbar has never really been a place of education for ta'aleem and ta'allum and tarbiyah. It's been there for, let's say, history or polemics or just, we say like tazakkur or reminders, that's it. It's very rare. Now, there are some rare ulama or zakirin that might try to do some sort of education on the minbar, but it was never really the model in most of our societies. And there's reasons for that, which I don't want to go into, but there's reasons for that. So somebody just hearing a few points about Khaybar and Khandaq and Ghadir and Saqifa, that doesn't give you the right to start talking about Islamic history. Because I guarantee you're going to sit in front of the wrong person and they're going to know a lot more about your history than you do. Like, for example, again, I'm just giving this as an example. I don't want to go into the depths of it. This is a simple example. We all feel like, if I, go with the Sunni and I get into it, I'll talk about Ghadir and I'll talk about how Mawla only means master and that's it. And there's a context from the Hadith and that's it. Hold on a second. In the Arabic language, Mawla has like 20, 30 different meanings. And if these Sunnis say, look, I can grab an Arabic dictionary and show you all the different meanings, and show you other situations in the Quran or in Riwayat that you would accept and show different meanings, then why do you only think that it's going to be master? Obviously, it does mean master, that is the point. But if they say something like that, then how are you going to respond? You just get flustered and frustrated, which will bring us to the second point. Sometimes we might even have the knowledge. Maybe we have studied, we've researched, we've read Arabic books, we have the sources, great, but we don't have the akhlaq to back it up either. So we start yelling and screaming at them, right? The kind of way we follow. A lot of us, maybe we have studied and read books, we are prepared, but the way that we deliver the information is just, right, it puts people off. Somebody who's truly thirsty for knowledge, if we're going to phrase it like that. If somebody's thirsty, what are you going to do? You offer them a cup or a glass of water. Imagine if somebody's thirsty, and then you take one of those like bidet sprayers and you blast them in the face with that, right? Besides being absolutely disgusting, that's not how you quench somebody's thirst. Right? You don't turn a hose on them, even though it's water. It's water. You should just take it, drink it. No, it has to be given properly, right? The delivery methodology, it matters a lot. Even I'm sure for those of us who have listened to different speakers and ulama and things like that, there are probably many ulama that you found that it seems like they're knowledgeable, but their delivery style maybe doesn't work. Whether it's a language barrier or a cultural barrier, or they're just not a good speaker. Myself, I'm not really a good orator necessarily. So sometimes that delivery can mess things up. Or sometimes it's the opposite. Their akhlaq might be really good. They might have oratory skill set. They might present something really nicely, but what they're presenting is, I want to say what I want to say, right? But something that's not really good, doesn't have any ilm behind it. right now we're stuck in a world where everything is shiny and flattering. Now it's all AI, littered up as well too. So things look really cool, they look really nice, but there's actually no quality behind it. Or sometimes on the other side, there might be quality, there might be some ilm behind something, but maybe the delivery is not great, it's not wrapped in a nice package, it just doesn't sound good. So if we're gonna find good ulama, we have to keep these things in mind. And if we're also, the main point, trying to engage with somebody else, I have to stop and say, look, am I really qualified to engage with somebody? Like this idea that we have that we're all ambassadors of Islam, I don't know where this came from. We're not ambassadors. No, let the ulama be ambassadors. And if somebody asks you a question, the humble thing to do is say, look, it's better if you ask a scholar rather than me, right? It's better I give you a book, or better I send you a link or a website or a lecture, something like that, rather than saying, I want to be the one to solve all your problems, because it's probably the ego that's doing that, the nafs, that's saying, I want to show you that I have all this knowledge and I can answer your questions so that I become your wali in some way. So you have to be careful, because the ego can really come out in these conversations, even though we might rationalize and think to ourselves that I'm trying to guide them towards haqq and truth. It might be the case that they are satisfied with our arguments, but it actually might destroy our nafs in the end, so we have to be very, very careful with that. Salawat ala Muhammad. One more point about this idea before we go into all these proofs. It's really trendy right now, it's been trendy for a while, when we talk about proofs, that people in this society, maybe even around the world, say, if you want to prove something to me, it's got to be logical, rational, scientific. Those are like the three sort of buzzwords. It's got to be all those or one of those, right? That's what people say. Was this always the case? That people were always demanding logic, reason, rationality, scientific evidence? No. Not everything, number one, can be proven through logic and reason. Or beyond that, not everything needs logic and reason. We haven't defined it yet, but whatever we have in our mind of what logic and reason means. Is it that we're always going after evidence for things? Right now, if I ask all of you, do you believe that you exist? Yeah, well, because I know, I feel that I exist, right? That's it. There's no logical argument there. I know I exist. How do you know you have emotions? Well, because I feel my emotions. How do you know you're thinking? Because it's me, it's part of me. What do you mean? I can't give you and sit down and write down a proof about this. That's just it. This is known as presential knowledge, right? This fancy sort of term. Right? Not all knowledge is something where you sit there and you write down these proofs and arguments to bring evidence. Or a more simplistic example. Those of us who, let's say, have been raised in a standard sort of like two-parent home. Has it ever occurred for any of us to say that, you know what, I don't actually know if these are my parents or not, because I've never seen the DNA evidence, right? So I cannot consider them my parents until I've seen that DNA evidence, and then even if the DNA evidence is shown, I have to test the machine, I have to go to that institute that did this, the lab that did this, I have to make sure all these things happen, and then and only then will I call them Ummi and Abu or mom and dad or whatever. No, nobody acts like that. Nobody needs evidence for that. Why? You're born in a house. These two adults that feed and clothe and take care of you and give you, slap you once in a while or whatever. Like, all right, these are obviously my parents. And that's kind of how we function. Right? So there's very obvious things that exist in reality that nobody needs a proof for. There's a proof that, or a basic idea that Allama Tabatabai mentions in one of his philosophy books, that every person has this built-in function that Allah has given us, that we just go about our lives, and when we see something functions and works, like we test it out and it works, then we don't need a proof for it. Like, I know that I'm not gonna, collapse through this minbar right now. I'm assuming like the atomic structure and everything just holds fast. Do I have any evidence that it won't just spontaneously combust? No. But I have this faith, quote unquote, or trust in this reality functioning as it is. Do I have absolute certainty that the water that's over here is absolutely going to quench my thirst? Do I have rational evidence for that? Can I sit there and offer you a proof? No. But what do I know? Whenever I take a sip of water, I digest it and it quenches my thirst. So it's experience. So experience defines and proves most of our things in our life. We don't sit there asking for logic and reason and science for everything. We take stuff or we act, and then we see that it works and we continue on. And the same thing, we should try to think about how it applies for our ibadat and our religious life too. Sometimes I've had people come and say, I don't see the point of praying. We mentioned this problem a few nights ago. I don't see the point. Because praying is supposed to make you feel calmer, it's supposed to make you a better person, but I don't understand what I'm saying. And when I pray, I don't see any effect right afterwards. So I'm just gonna stop praying. I'm like, okay, sure. So I asked this person, I said, when you get a headache, what do you do? Or you have some like pain in your body, what do you do? Like, take what's it called? NSAID, right? It was non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, Tylenol, Advil, ibuprofen, whatever, any of those things. Take medicine. I'm like, okay. Have you like double checked that medicine? Like, did you sit down and analyze and make sure it's actually ibuprofen or acetaminophen or whatever? Have you tested it? No. Like, do you know the mechanisms behind why these anti-inflammatory drugs work this way and stop your headache or migraine or whatever? No. Like, why do you keep taking it? Like, does it always work? Like, no, sometimes they don't work. Like, but you still take it anyway, right? Like, yeah. Like, why? Because why? Well, I trust the doctors and the pharmacists that put this stuff together. Then why do you apply all these principles to the dunya, but you don't apply to the akhirah? And this is about our kind of doubt and faith sometimes. So some doctor, some pharmaceutical company, which actually doesn't care about you, they care about money more than you. They put this stuff together, and you'll go ahead and you'll do that. Remember back in the COVID days? I don't want to bring up our trauma from those years. Everybody was all about, trust the science, trust the scientists. That's what everybody kept saying. And in the same breath, I would hear our fellow Muslim brothers like, yeah, but we can't trust all these scholars and ulama, we don't know what their agenda is. Like, why are you willing to trust these individuals with this one discipline? Again, which we should do, definitely. But you're not going to trust individuals who have sacrificed and given up their life to continue the message of Islam and the message of the Ahlul Bayt. You don't want to trust them? One group is profiting off of all this stuff, and the other group is living in like these broken down homes. They have like hardly any money. They're not living lavish lifestyles. What reason do they have to not bring you towards the truth? They've dedicated their whole life towards this. They've sat there hours and hours, their whole life, 50, 60 years, reading books, checking over information, being called out in the middle of their classes as, some young student will say, this proof maybe is not strong, and they start challenging their teacher like that, and then their teacher will change their opinion based on this. Like, who else has a system like that? We have a system like this. And you don't want to trust that system? Why? You don't want to pray because you don't think it affects you? Maybe the problem is not the system, maybe it's you. Maybe it's me that when I pray, I'm not doing it properly, I'm not doing it correctly, or I'm not doing it with the proper conditions that are there. And that's why it's not affecting me. Maybe I should check myself before I start blaming it on somebody else or some other institution in Mulana. Salawat Muhammad. One other final sort of introductory point about these proofs. So, since not everybody is a quote-unquote rational creature, even basic Western psychology will tell you, the average person, even if you give them logical, reasonable, scientific evidence, does that automatically, like we're like robots or something, we just automatically say, okay, now that's it, I believe in it? No. I'm sure it's happened to us many times, or we've seen these kind of people online where they're given evidence, right? Here's a historical record, here's a scientific, study, whatever it is, here's video evidence, whatever, and they're like, no, I just don't believe it. So people can be stubborn as well too, or usually we say people are more emotional than they are logical. There are people who are analytical and logical, sure, but on average, most people are going to be more emotional. And this point, I think, is also related to Azadari as well. I mean, I'll share a little bit of my history. When I had my various sort of different experiences in life, when I started to become a bit more religious, or at least interested in Islam, I went through all the typical phases that I think a young Muslim that is trying to become religious goes through. I had this one phase where I was like, Azadari stuff, I don't understand it, I don't care about it. Why are we just repeating the same story over and over again? What's with this poetry? What's the point of all this stuff? Why don't we just sit there and have classes and workshops and lectures? Like, that's what we need. We need to educate ourselves. So let's leave all this emotional stuff aside. It's a very ignorant and arrogant phase that I had. Like, we need to be educated, thinking that that's the only thing that creates insan and builds a human being. That's not it. That's hardly even like maybe 1% of what a person needs. Yeah, we need education and ilm and knowledge and all that stuff. But if our heart is not in it, the brain can only do so much. Right? There's this very specific connection that exists between the two. And if this was so important in the majalis that were established by the Ahlul Bayt, why do we see them lecturing? Or giving classes in the middle of a majlis? They don't do it. They never did anything like that. Those initial majalis that were established by the Ahlul Bayt were nothing but poetry. That's all it was. So instead of us, again, I'm saying to my old version of myself, I had to kind of mature right into this, that we may have a really skewed version of what the Ahlul Bayt were trying to establish. What's been recommended in the riwayat is to cry for Imam Hussein and the Shuhada, to recite poetry for them, to make people cry from the poetry. That's what's been recommended. So if we really wanted to follow in their footsteps, again, I don't mean to sound like a Shia Wahhabi about this, but I'm just trying to make a point. Technically, we should only do poetry and then leave. I mean, food too, obviously, right? You can't leave without food. But yeah, fine, poetry, food, and then go home. But clearly, we saw that, our heart is there, but there's also something that we are lacking too on the intellectual front. So let us complement or supplement the emotional side with something intellectual, however small or large it might be, or something historical, or an akhlaqi reminder, or whatever it happens to be. But the real sort of punch, or that final sort of like jab that comes, is from the emotional side. And it's something that took me a long time to understand as well too. That again, you can sit there and read something or learn something or read a book and try to understand it, but the heart's connection is always much stronger. Now let's give one example. Let's say, let's say whichever person that you love the most, whether it's one of your parents or a sibling, a grandparent, spouse, whatever it is, somebody that whenever they say something to you, they request something from you, you'll want to do it right away, right? Something like that. You don't want to say no. Imagine now on their birthday, right? It's their birthday, on their birthday, whatever, they make a wish, like, oh, I wish that, I'll give the typical Disney example, right? Like, oh, I wish you become a doctor, right? Something like that. So now you might hear that and say, okay, sure. And maybe you'll keep it in your mind. Like, that's a birthday wish, maybe I'll try. Maybe you'll pay attention, maybe you won't. But now take that same example, and let's say it wasn't their birthday wish, it was their dying wish. On their deathbed, their last words is, I really want you to become a doctor. And then they pass away. You think that those two things are equal? No. That emotional connection, those heartstrings that are being pulled on, that's some guilt shaming, something like hardcore uncle auntie guilt shaming right there, right? But it has a big effect, doesn't it? That emotional thing has much more of a powerful effect than any logic or reason would do. So the reason I'm mentioning that is because when we're talking about all these proofs and proofs and proofs that are there, number one, it's not the normal way that human beings interact in society. And number two, there are so many different styles of proofs that are there. If somebody doesn't accept one, okay, that's fine, that's you. If I'm convinced by something else, you want some higher philosophical proof, that's your problem, that's not my problem. If you have shak, you have doubt, you don't believe God exists because it wasn't convincing for you, well, too bad, that's on you. You go do the research, go read some philosophical works. I'm okay with just looking out at reality, seeing that it all functions perfectly, that there's no chaos in the world, that this earth, had it been, 0.00001 degree change in terms of its variables, right, from Big Bang, whatever, that this place wouldn't have existed, that's enough for me to say that, yeah, there's a creator behind that. And that's good enough. We don't have to always go after logic and reason and things like that, too. So we don't need to be ashamed, and we should actually, I don't want to say shame the other side, but say, look, if you need all these other proofs, that's a weakness in you, it's not a weakness in me. Because throughout history, we've all been functioning based on the heart, based on experience. The vast majority of human beings, human civilization, has always believed in some higher power, whether it was one God or multiple gods, whatever. We always knew that there was something beyond us, that there was a soul, another realm. So if now you, small little atheist or agnostic minority or materialist minority, you have doubts in this, you go solve it yourself and figure it out. That's not our job to make you whole. I mean, okay, with all that said, some of us might still want to hear some of these proofs, right? Okay, but can we still offer these logical proofs? Yes, we can. So what we'll try to do, we'll start tomorrow night with this, inshallah, is go through some of the basic ones. The first, there's different categories of proofs, so we'll talk about those. Again, I don't want to get too philosophical on the minbar, because sometimes, our attention span may not be able to handle it. So I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. If there's specific points about Tawheed or proving God or atheistic proofs that you would like answered, if you mention it to me or mention it to somebody else to mention it to me, then I'll try to specifically address those. Although what I'll try to do is maybe 1, 2, 3 objections at most, and then we'll kind of move on to the next point about God's justice, because that one is very, very important. That I want to make sure that we hit that point as well. So that'll be the topics going on for the next few nights, inshallah. One more salawat ala Muhammad. If we're not convinced yet that logic and reason and rationality and all science and all these things are second to the heart, then we haven't paid attention to Kabbalah. Karbala is not a place of rational actors. It's not a place where logic and reason are reigning supreme. It's a place where people's love, their heart, that's what's coming out. If somebody was purely rational, when on that eve of Ashura, when Imam Hussein alayhi salam gives bay'ah back to everybody and says, look, your akhirah is fine. You can leave me now. Take family, take these children and just run. I won't complain about you. You'll be okay in the eyes of Allah. Go. I'll put out the lights. You're not embarrassed either. Go. The rational thing to do, I'm a pure rational actor, is yeah, why wouldn't I do that? Why would I have to sacrifice my life if I can gain Jannah without sacrificing it? Why wouldn't I do that? But you see, all of them, when that light comes back on, like, no, this is not a matter of bay'ah and wajib and haram. This has nothing to do with this. This is our love for you, Ya Aba Abdullah. The poetry that we recite, this is not a rational exercise. Somebody hitting their chest out of pain and anguish, wanting to feel some semblance of connection to the trampling that took place on the afternoon or on that evening. That's not a rational thing to do. We say super rational, it's beyond rationality. Because that exists in a higher plane. That's what Karbala is trying to show us as well too. That we have to learn to move beyond that. And one of the greatest examples, somebody who lived, manifested this quality of love is none other than Habib ibn Muhurram. In that very name of Habib, right? Being this beloved individual. As we've all been taught since we were younger when we heard his story about how it has been narrated by some, how he would follow in the footsteps, even though he was older than Imam Hussein, according to some, that he would follow in this young baby's footsteps and pick up that dirt and put it on top of his head, recognizing that this is a great personality. Rasulullah sees this and picks up Habib, gives him a kiss, and the companions were like, why are you showing him so much love and affection? So you didn't see how much love he was showing to my Hussein. If you had seen that, you would have shown your love for Habib as well. Habib, like some others, although they were the initial ones who had sent out letters to Imam Hussein from Kufa, right, because that's where Habib was. People like him, Muslim ibn Awsaja. These were the true followers of the Ahlul Bayt, true followers and lovers of Hussein. They were the first to send out letters right away, to gather support, to gather weapons and arms and keep it in their homes, to try to protect others. That's what they were doing. But because of the blockades, because of the curfews that were imposed by Ibn Ziyad, some individuals who wanted to go, who wanted to support Muslim ibn Aqil, or who wanted to support Imam Hussein initially, to join him, to go, they couldn't. They were stopped. Some were jailed. Some were kept in prison until they died. Some were tortured. Their families were tortured and killed because of this. Some were released, and when they were released, they didn't have information about what was happening. So this is why narrations tell us that this is why a letter was sent by Imam Hussein to Habib. They say if he was such a great companion, why wasn't he there with Imam Hussein in Karbala? Well, it's because there were some other issues that were happening during that time. Information was being cut off. People were being cut off. Okay, I want to discuss all this too. One of the narrators tells us that the way that the army, right, we hear all these numbers about the army of Umar ibn Sa'd, we heard these numbers, 30,000, 40,000, 50, 60, all these giant numbers. Those numbers didn't just happen all at once. What happened was each, one commander of a specific battalion would start and they would make their way from Kufa or wherever they were coming from, Sham, Basra, wherever, and they would join whatever army was already there in Karbala. So it started off as whatever number, thousands, and then another battalion of 1,000 would come with their commander, and then another battalion of 10,000. More and more it would grow and grow. And when this would happen, because of the evil that was in their heart, whenever these enemy soldiers would see the small tents, the little number of the followers of Imam Hussein, what the commanders would order their soldiers to do is they would say, you can obviously go at a trotting normal speed on your horse, or you can whip your horse and say, no, go faster, make noise on the ground. And the reason the commanders would tell their soldiers and horses to do that is because we want to strike fear in the hearts of the women and children in this camp. This is the kind of evil that existed at that time. So this is happening now, day after day after day. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, all these nights, all these days, soldiers are passing by, joining the camp of Umar ibn Sa'd, and then somebody like Zainab sees this, and she says, Hussein, I see all these reinforcements, all this support for the enemies, what about us? Don't you have a support? Don't you have any reinforcements? Is there nobody that can come and help calm our children down, help support us to give us some morale boost? And this is where Hussein says, yes, I do have a Habib that can come and assist us. So he writes his letter to Habib. He secretly sends out a messenger that is able to deliver the letter. When, according to some narrators, when this messenger knocks on the door of Habib's house and he opens the door, they say he didn't even need to ask what was happening or who this was. He said that I smell the fragrance of my Mawla. Give me this letter. And he opened it up and he reads this letter. He begins to tear up and cry right away. Imam Hussein is addressing him. And Hussein ibn Ali ila rajulin faqih. You're a great scholar. Ya Habib, we are in need of your support. We are surrounded on all sides. We have no one else to come and help us. Our women are afraid, our children are crying, they are thirsty. Will you come and aid us? Will you come and help us? Will you come and show your love and support for us? And the narrators say that this is where Habib, he now has a small moment where he has been tested, but he wants to test his wife as well too. And when his wife asks, why are you crying like this? What is going on within you? Why are you hesitating like this? Who is this letter from? He tells her, he says, oh, my wife, I've received a letter from Hussein, and he's been surrounded by enemy soldiers, and he's asking me for his help. And she says, okay, well, what are you thinking? What do you want to do? He said, well, I'm afraid to leave you, because if I leave, who will protect you? Who will take care of you? I need to provide food for you. I have to provide protection for you and shelter for you. He starts going on and trying to test out, see the real allegiance of his wife. And his wife gets angry. He says, the son of Zahra is calling you, and you're not acting right away? How dare you speak to me like this? If you will not go and protect Hussein, then give me your sword, give me your horse, and I'll go and fight for the son of Zahra. I'll go myself. And then Habib says, no. I was just making sure that you're okay if I go give my life for Hussein. Habib then takes some people from his house. He takes his servants. He takes some of his family members, and he heads towards Kufa in the middle of the night so that they can avoid the blockade of the curfew. Some narrations say now, while this is happening, while the morale of the troops of Imam Hussein are not good, they say that all of a sudden now, Zainab in her tent starts to hear cheering. They start to hear takbirat and dhikr, and people are now cheering from their camps, and they haven't heard anything like this in days. So Zainab says to Fidla, go and see what's happening outside. Why are people so happy now? So Fidla goes, and she goes and sees that Habib has arrived at the camp, and now everybody's excited. Remember, Habib is not some young warrior. He's 70, maybe 80 years old. This is an old man. Fidla comes back and tells her master, says, Ya bint Zahra, do you know that Habib has arrived to come and support, come and help us? Now Zainab is now excited. She says, let me go and send my salams to Habib. He says, no, I'll go send your salams on your behalf. You stay here. So Fidla now goes and returns to Habib and says, my master, my lady Zainab, sends her salams to you. And some narrators tell us that Habib begins to slap himself in the face over and over again. Says, why is somebody like Zainab sending salams to someone like me? What is somebody like Zainab doing in a place like this? Why would somebody like Zainab be surrounded in this way? What have we Muslims done to allow our Ahlul Bayt, our Ahlul Haram to be surrounded and to be stuck in a horrible situation like this? Now, Habib returns the salams. They begin to now prepare for their final moments. Habib now asks for the permission from the Imam to go out in the battlefield before the Salah time so that they can protect the Imam while he offers his Salah. Habib goes out into the battlefield. He fights many different soldiers, but he eventually succumbs to his wounds and he passes away in the arms of the Imam. The one part before we end the Masai that I want to share with you. This is now back when the Ahlul Bayt are taken to Kufa. One narrator says that when these heads are on their spears and they're being taken through the streets of Kufa, they said that there was one family member. They say one of the sons of Habib did not join Habib because he didn't know what was happening. He was asleep at that night. So he didn't know what had happened to his father. So now he is woken up by this commotion on the time when these soldiers and the Ahl Haram are being passed through Kufa. And when he hears this, he goes outside with some of his companions and friends. And he says that what is going on outside, and he's being told that the army of Ibn Ziyad, of Umar ibn Saad, they have killed these individuals, they've killed Hussein and some of his family members and companions, and their heads are being paraded around through the streets along with the family and the children. So Habib the son of Habib is worried about this. He goes and starts to look around at the heads that are on these spears and these spikes, and then as he looks, he sees the head of his father on the spear and on the spike, and his heart breaks. He goes and attacks the soldier that was holding that spear with the head of his father on it. He takes that head of his father, he holds it in his lap and begins crying out and calling out to the head of his father, saying, Baba, how can you do this to me? No son should see his father in such a situation like this. If we were there, we would tell the son of Habib, O son of Habib, don't you just look around and see that Imam Sajjad is just a few steps away from you? Imam Sajjad has been looking at his father the whole time in a much worse situation than you've seen your own father like this. If anybody has had their heart broken more than you, then it's of course Imam Sajjad. على لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون بضم قضائه وتسليما ما سمع حسين
يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين اونچا ہے علم تیرا دیکھ میرے غازی اونچا ہے علم تیرا دیکھ میرے غازی اونچا ہے علم تیرا دل سینے میں جب تک ہے بھولے گا نہ غم تیرا دیکھ میرے غازی اونچا ہے علم تیرا دیکھ میرے غازی اونچا ہے علم تیرا حسین کی دعا بن کر کہ وقت وہ آئے گا حسین کی دعا بن کر ایک وقت وہ آئے گا سجا ہوگا عباس علم تیرا دل سینے میں جب تک ہے بھولے گا نہ غم تیرا میرے غازی اونچا ہے علم تیرا دیکھ میرے غازی اونچا ہے علم تیرا آزادی ہے زہرا بھی زینب زیارت کو آزادی ہے زہرا بھی زینب زیارت کو محرم کو اٹھتا ہے علم تیرا دل سینے میں جب تک ہے بھولے گا نہ غم تیرا میرے غازی اونچا ہے علم تیرا دیکھ میرے غازی اونچا ہے علم تیرا تابوت جب اٹھتا ہے شبیر کا ہے غازی تابوت جب اٹھتا ہے شبیر کا ہے غازی تابوت کے آگے بھی چلتا ہے علم تیرا دل سینے میں جب تک ہے بھولے گا نہ غم تیرا میرے غازی اونچا ہے علم تیرا دیکھ میرے غازی اونچا ہے علم تیرا پرچم کا پھہرا تھا یہ عاشقی زینب کی پرچم کا پھہرا تھا یہ عاشقی زینب کی کلیجے سے ہم کیسے کہو ہم کیسے ہو کم تیرا دل سینے میں جب تک ہے بھولے گا نہ غم تیرا میرے غازی اونچا ہے علم تیرا دیکھ میرے غازی اونچا ہے علم تیرا بازاروں میں زندہ میں دربار ہر لمحہ بازاروں میں زندہ میں دربار میں ہر لمحہ تو سانسوں پہ جب تک ہے بھولے گا نہ غم تیرا میرے غازی اونچا ہے علم تیرا دیکھ میرے غازی اونچا ہے علم تیرا جب بہ گیا سب پانی جب ٹوٹی تیری یاد جب بہ گیا سب پانی جب ٹوٹی تیری یاد سینے کے اندر یا مشکل میں دم تیرا دل سینے میں جب تک ہے بھولے گا نہ غم تیرا میرے غازی اونچا ہے علم تیرا دیکھ میرے غازی اونچا ہے علم تیرا آواز تیری سرور شبیر سے وابستہ آواز تیری سرور شبیر سے وابستہ آواز سے وابستہ قلم تیرا دل سینے میں جب تک ہے بھولے گا نہ غم تیرا میرے غازی اونچا ہے علم تیرا دیکھ میرے غازی اونچا ہے علم تیرا یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین محمد صلی اللہ
السلام علیکم یا رسول اللہ، السلام علیکم یا نبی اللہ، السلام علیکم یا امیر المؤمنین، السلام علیکم یا فاطمہ الزہراء سیدۃ نساء العالمین، السلام علیکم یا حسن المجتبی، السلام علیکم یا سید الشہداء بکربلاء یا ابا عبداللہ، السلام علی الحسین وعلی علی بن الحسین وعلی اولاد الحسین وعلی اصحاب الحسین. السلام علیکم یا ائمۃ المعصومین علی بن الحسین ومحمد بن علی وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى محمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا حجة القائم بن حسن المهدي مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان الأمان 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 عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل الله مخرجه وظهوره وجعلنا من خير أعوانه وأنصاره وشيعه والمستشهدين بين يديه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Brothers and sisters, inshallah, there will be a Q&A for the sisters and other parts have passed out. For the brothers, they passed out, so inshallah, please get the tabarruk and sit back down. Inshallah, we'll start in a few minutes. جب تک